thinking about this subject a lot, and figured I'd make a video about it, a story time video about it, while it was fresh in my head. And I'm gonna call it when the profit motive goes awry. And what do I mean by that? When somebody looks at a ledger and says, hey, if we did this, we could save $1 million. So, and I don't want to pick on any person or any business unit or section of a business in particular, because somebody had to convince somebody to implement this plan that is supposed to save or make a bunch of money. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. But when the profit motive or the goal is not to do what is right, but just for pure essence of making money, which is not a bad thing, but when you don't take in consideration all other aspects of the plan, or find out more details of what the plan entails, and you implement something just for the sake of saving money or making money, things don't go well. All right. So the first two stories are related. They're within the same industry and within the same company. The second one is just a little, and the second two actually are related to the same company. And these are my personal experiences. I personally was around and connected to these two incidences. So, number one, there was a company that bought power generating engines, big jet engines that that are hooked up to a generator, and it makes power for the electric grid. And they run on natural gas. They can run on any fuel really, but these ran on natural gas. And somebody within the company decided that, hey, we run these engines all night, but we don't get paid for any energy that we make at night because nobody's using energy at night. So these things are just running idle and using fuel. So why don't we turn them off at night between the hours of midnight and 4 in the morning, and we could save $1 million a month by doing this. Sounds good on paper, right? So if you have a car and you're not driving it, turn it off and leave it until you need it in the morning, and you get in and you turn it on and you drive to work. Sounds like a good idea. Well, the problem is these power generating engines are not like car engines, and they're not like airplane jet engines. These are designed to turn on and stay on. So that'll come in later in the story time. So what happened when they implemented this is nobody told the people who had this bright idea that you can't just leave the natural gas inside these fuel lines. When you turn off these jet engines, you have to vent all of the gas. This is what I've been told. If I'm wrong, somebody who knows can tell me about it, but this is what I was told, is that it looks good on paper, but nobody considered that you have to vent this gas out. And what they do is they vent it out, flare it. They burn it. If you ever been around a petrochemical plant or some kind of industrial facility, and you see a big flame up in the sky, that's called a flare. And so they have to vent all the gas that's in the pipe, because they can't leave it there. They can't just turn the spigot off. So they vent all that gas. So the $1 million they were supposed to save was maybe a couple of $100,000 that they actually saved, because most of that gas got vented up. Most of the gas that was in the pipeline was vented out. And so when they vent it out, they purge all the lines. And then when you go to start up the jet engine again, you got to refill all those gas lines. So they didn't. It didn't quite turn out the way they wanted to. So that's story number one. Story number two, related to that. Well, again, these jet engines are designed to be what they call base load units. So you turn them on, you leave them on, and then at night, if there's no load or low load, you're supposed to leave them idle. If you ever have to idle them back or scale them back, you idle them. Because when you turn them off, you have the cooling system stops. So you have to run them until they cool down. You can't just like leave them hot. And the only way they spin is when there's fuel in there. There's no like and because of what a thing called creep. Metal at higher temperatures will sag, right? So if it's under a load, it'll sag. So you got to keep these things spinning. And these shafts are huge. They're probably like 4 or 5 feet in diameter. But anyway, so when they turn them off, you have to spin them down. You have to cool them down before you can stop them. So you actually introduce electricity. You run it backwards, basically. Now the generator is actually the motor that keeps the jet engine shaft going. So not only are you still using electricity, you have to do this until it cools down. Well, you do this every day, and you have what's called thermal cycling. And these engines are not designed for that much thermal cycling. So you get expansion, contraction, and if you ever bent a coat hanger back and forth, well, they break. So what they were doing by turning these engines on and off, or by using them as what they call base load units or peak load units, only turning them on when there's peak power demand, they were thermal cycling these things, and they were breaking. Literally, parts were fan blades were breaking prematurely. They were supposed to run like, I'm not making this number up, but I seem to remember like 25,000 hours, and they were breaking at maybe 8 to 10,000 hours of operation because of all the thermal cycling. So that's that idea, not so good. All right, so story number 3. I'll make this quick. I worked at a company that used these plastic sleeves to put the work order traveler that goes with the parts that get manufactured. They're just codes for what procedures you're supposed to use, and so these plastic sleeves, I think they have some kind of cost. Well, the business unit manager went up to the purchasing agent and said, "Hey, I would like you to get a hold of the supplier that supplies these plastic sleeves to us and see if we can get a 10% reduction in price for these sleeves." And the purchasing agent said, "With all due respect, we pay $3,000 a year for these sleeves. So if they gave these to us, we would save $3,000 a year." Now, mind you, this is a $4 billion company that I work for. So the guy, the business manager, wanted this guy to spend his time to try to save $3,000 in a year. And so yeah, because you should try to save money, you got to look at the scope of things. Well, how much impact versus effort is this going to cause? So anyway, that idea kind of went by the wayside. Good thing it wasn't implemented, because it would have been a rabbit hole that would have not produced much gain. So the same company they hired a new CFO or COO or some high level dude, and he came in, and I get a phone call one day, and I was told that my services were no longer needed. And come to find out that I think they had like a 10 or 20% layoff, and we weren't losing money. It was an arbitrary reduction in force to save money, because the dude that had the bright idea said, "Oh, you guys are way too top heavy. You don't need all these people. I want everybody to cut, in every department, 20% across the board, indiscriminately. No rhyme or reason, no justification on is this position really needed, because every manager is going to say, well, I need every person I got. I get it, but at least give people a chance to make their case. Say, hey, why you need a particular number of staff. So anyway, they laid off about 20% of the workforce, and this was a very highly regulated industry. Well, the next government audit that they had, which was like the year after, the government came in and said, okay, well, your procedures say you have a person to do, this job. Can we talk to that person? No, we fired him. And so it didn't take long to say, okay, well, what about this person? No, we fired that person too. Well, what about this process? Oh, well, we don't have anybody doing that either. So they got a warning letter from the government, and it wasn't good. And they ended up hiring back, I'd say about 80 or 90% of the people that they let go. And they didn't get a hold of me because I had already moved on. But in the interim, it actually cost them more, because they had to hire probably like twice as many people that they laid off in temporary workers to do what they call remedial action. So not only did they have to restaff all the people that they let go, they had to hire more staff to do corrective actions and follow up on the things that they weren't doing for like a year. Going through records. Hey, was this done properly? Hey, did we document the correct inspections? Did we document the correct manufacturing processes? Did we train people correctly? So it cost them way more than they actually saved by laying off all these people. Now, this is anecdotal, and I don't have any solid numbers, but just talking to old coworkers, it was ugly. It was really, really ugly. It was unnecessary. But you know what? I came out better off, actually, than if I had stayed with the company in a better position. So, things happen for a reason. Sometimes reasons are bad, but for me, it worked out well. Unfortunately, for other people, they face some real hardships. And it's all because somebody got it in their bright idea that, employees are just numbers to move around, pawns on a chessboard, basically, and it ended badly. And I don't know whatever happened to the dude, but I know he doesn't work there anymore. So anyway, that's my story time about 4 times that when you just purely look at the beans and make decisions on just what the beans tell you, things don't end well. All right, so hopefully that helps people in positions of decision making to learn from other people's mistakes. All right, that's all I got. Later.